Okay, welcome COM 225 students. This is public speaking at Paradise Valley Community College. And my name is Frank Switzer. I'm also known as the Sultan of Speech and the Captain of Communication. Not really, but I thought I'd just try to get your attention to begin this video. So, two things that you're going to need for this video, especially, one of them for every one of these 4 videos, but right now you need your syllabus. So the syllabus is on Canvas. You can either pull it up on your screen as you're watching this video, or you should print it out because we are going to go through the syllabus in this video. And you need note-taking paper. And you need note-taking paper every time you watch one of these videos because there are going to be some questions that you're going to be asked to answer at the end of each of these videos, and there's going to be a quiz later on that a lot of the information from the quiz is going to be in these 4 videos. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to talk a little bit about public speaking first. I'm going to review the syllabus. I'm not going to read it word for word. Nobody wants anybody to do that. But we are going to talk about the major and important points of the syllabus. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about some public speaking principles that will be helpful. The second video that we're going to go through is going to be kind of unpacking the assignments a little bit more. I'm just going to mention the assignments today. The next video that's coming out, the very next one that you'll watch in a couple of days, is going to unpack all the assignments in a much deeper way to help you understand them better. The third video that we're going to do is going to talk in depth about the 6-step guide for effective public speaking, which is the most important rubric that you're going to have in this entire class for these 8 weeks. And then the last video that we're going to do, which will probably be the longest video, is going to be just talking about various public speaking tips and topics and how to research and how to put together public presentations. So let's get started with this one. There's a communication scholar named Joseph DeVito. Paradise Valley Community College has in the past used many of his textbooks for communication classes, and he writes in one of his textbooks, as you move up the hierarchy in your business and professional lives, you will find an even greater need for public speaking. I would add the word competent to that quote. In other words, as you move up the hierarchy in your business and professional lives, you will find an even greater need for competent public speaking skills. Robert Lane Greene, who is an author and a rhetorician and kind of a word nerd like me, he loves to study words. He wrote a great book about 15 years ago called You Are What You Speak. It's one of the best books on rhetoric I've ever read. And he says this, and you need to write this down because this will be a question that you'll have to answer eventually during this semester. But he writes this: speech is jazz. That's a metaphor. He's saying that public speaking is kind of like being a good jazz musician. He says speech is jazz. First, you learn the basic rules, then you become good enough to improvise. In other words, you learn the basic rules of music, and then once you're competent at the basic rules of music, you can start to improvise and you can play some jazz, because lots of jazz music is improvisation. It's the same thing with public speaking. Once you learn the basic rules of public speaking, you become good enough to start improvising. Or another way of saying it is to speak impromptu, to speak without any preparation whatsoever, to be able to organize your thoughts quick enough that somebody can ask you a question or ask for you to comment on something for 5 minutes, and you can organize your thoughts almost immediately, and you can do that in a competent and effective way. One of the things that we will miss because this is an online class rather than doing an in-person class. I've taught at Paradise Valley Community College for 21 years in person, and now for the last year I've been teaching online. But one of the things that we will miss by not being in person is that if we were doing in person, we would have an exercise where you got to do impromptu speaking. In other words, and I would demonstrate it first. I love impromptu speaking. I think it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like exercising your speaking muscles. But what we would do is we would hand you a topic. The second you're given that topic, you have a minute to look at the topic, organize your thoughts, and then you have to give an organized, structural, effective 6-minute speech on that topic. That's impromptu speaking. It's actually a lot of fun. I know it's nerve-wracking too, but it's a lot of fun. Already maybe you've gotten the idea that I love public speaking. I really do. I've been doing it most of my life. It's my profession, public speaking. And I find that ironic because all the social science research, maybe you've heard this already, all the social science research claims to say that persons' number one fear in the world, their number one fear is public speaking. People are scared to death of getting up in front of people and having to speak. That's their number one fear. The number two fear is the fear of death. You understand, people are more afraid of giving a public speech than they are of dying. Now that research fact, I put fact in quotes, that research fact is what prompted the comedian Jerry Seinfeld to say that means if you go to a funeral, the person who is delivering the eulogy would much rather be the person in the casket. and that's true. So many people are afraid of public speaking. I will just let you know that personally my greatest fear in life is that people won't let me speak in public. I love public speaking. But the question then becomes, why is this? Why is this so scary? Why do we get so nervous? Why do we get so amped up? And we've talked about the nerve-wracking experience of public speaking in the communication discipline. We've talked about it in several different ways. We talk about it as speaker anxiety, plain old nervousness. We talk about all these different names that we have for the idea that most people just don't like getting up in front of other people and delivering speeches. So why is this? Why is this so scary? And I would argue that the reason it's scary is because when you stand up in front of a group of people, the perception that you have of what everybody is expecting from you changes dramatically from virtually any other life situation. The perception that you suddenly have, what you think everybody else is expecting from you, is raised. It's much higher. Now you're up. All the attention is on you. You're supposed to be the expert in what you're talking about because you're the one at the front now. That raises the stakes. That raises the expectations, and that drives us to become nervous. That's that adrenaline that starts to flow through us. But the truth is we all do public speaking all the time, every day in our lives. Maybe not so much since the pandemic started in March of 2020. We're not out in the public as much, face-to-face with people as much as we used to be. Nevertheless, we still do a lot of public speaking, probably on an everyday basis. Let me give you some examples. So if you just walk up to a group of friends and start participating in the conversation, that is a form of public speaking. But because your perception of their expectations of what you're saying is not that high, you're not nervous. It doesn't matter. You're with your friends. There's really no expectation. Even if you flub it, it doesn't matter. There's no expectation. Here's one. Some of you are probably food servers. You work as a food server somewhere. When you approach a table, every time you approach a table, that is a form of public speaking. When you walk up and greet the people at the table for the first time, when you're answering questions about the menu, when you're recommending what to eat, when you're asking if everything's okay, all of that is a form of public speaking. Maybe you are on a team at your work. Maybe you're part of some group at work that is given a task to accomplish. When you're in the midst of meeting and trying to figure things out and try to get things done, that is also a form of public speaking. If you're planning to go to graduate school after college, after you get your bachelor's degree, you're probably going to have to interview for graduate school, whatever discipline you happen to go into. That interview is going to be a form of public speaking. And of course, you're going to be nervous there because the stakes are high and your perception of what the interviewer is looking for is going to be very high as well. Let's say you go into the healthcare field. You become a doctor or a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner or something. Having to deal with patients, and especially if you're an emergency room doctor and you have to go out and talk to a family about their family member that's back being worked on, that is a form of public speaking. And then one last example, one of my favorites is If any of you have ever been pulled over by a police officer for maybe driving too fast or, well, probably driving too fast, as I have on occasion, you get pulled over by a police officer, that is a marvelous opportunity for impromptu public speaking skills to come to the forefront and maybe be able to figure out how to talk your way out of the ticket. Dwayne Lifton, who is another public speaking author, he's written books on public speaking, he writes this: the best way to improve at public speaking is to speak at every opportunity. Every time somebody comes to you and says, we'd like you to speak to this group of people, even if your first knee-jerk response to that invitation is, there's no way, I don't want to go and speak to a group of people. What Lifton is saying is, if you want to get better at public speaking, make yourself available to go and speak publicly to groups. So the best way to improve at public speaking is to speak at every opportunity. Every chance you get to speak, you should take it, for practice only makes you better and less anxious. It's true. The more you do it, the better you get at it. The more you practice anything, the better you get at it, and the more confident you become, and you're more willing to perform that particular task. I was a part of something called Toastmasters for a number of years. Toastmasters is actually a local public speaking club. The people that are in Toastmasters get together every week and they give each other speeches so they can practice public speaking. So public speaking can be improved by doing it at every opportunity. And you're going to get 4 opportunities in this class. Now, there is one little caveat here. It's going to be different than really public speaking because it is online. The sad part of this is that you're not going to be able to speak to the whole class. If this was a hybrid class, yes, you would probably get the opportunity to speak to the rest of your classmates. This is a strictly online class. So essentially, and we'll talk more about this later, but essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be giving your speech to some recording device and then uploading it hopefully to your own YouTube channel and sending me the link to be able to watch your speech. So your audience is essentially going to be your recording device. Maybe some students, and I appreciate this, some students will have their romantic partner there or their family there in the audience, maybe their dogs and cats in the audience, whatever. They'll have other people there in the audience, and that can be helpful and fun too. But generally, you're just going to be giving the speeches to a recording device and then sending the link to me. One of the interesting things about public speaking, in terms of research that's been done, is that on average, for a person to listen to a speech, a political speech, a motivational speech, maybe a message at a church or a synagogue or something like that, when somebody hears a public speech by somebody, generally speaking, our retention rate of what we heard during that speech event 72 hours later, 3 days later, is only about 2% of what we heard. Now think about that. You sit for 30 minutes listening to somebody deliver a compelling public speech, or maybe a not so compelling public speech. Within just 3 days, 72 hours, you've forgotten 98% of what you heard. Our goal in this class, COM 225, is to give you the tools and the practice to be able to make it so that when you give a public speech, a public presentation, when all eyes are on you, 72 hours later, people will remember 10% of what you said. That doesn't sound like much. I know, they forgot 90% of what I said, but that 10% is still way better than the 2%, and that will give you a decided advantage in the marketplace if you can get people to retain 10% of what you've heard. And what the curriculum that we have to work you through in these 8 weeks is going to help get you there. If you take the curriculum seriously, you do your assignments, you engage with the class, that will help get you there, and it will make you more marketable in our marketplace today. That's the idea behind this class anyway. So, if you could, please grab your syllabus. I want to work through the syllabus and hit the high points, the important points. Some points I'm going to repeat over and over and over because they're really important for you to get, and take notes if you can as well. So the syllabus, whatever section it happens to be, this video is for all the sections that I'm teaching during this semester. So it's the same material, so it doesn't matter. So there's my name. I have a Master of Arts in Communication. I also have a Master of Divinity, and I'll explain that later if you have no idea what that is. My email is frank.switzer@paradisevalley.edu. I am an adjunct instructor at Paradise Valley Community College. An adjunct instructor is a fancy way of saying I'm part-time, and I've been part-time here for 21 years. I was given an opportunity by the last department head, Marilyn Cristiano, to teach COM 100. I did one semester, one section, loved it. They liked me, and so I've been here ever since teaching COM 100 and COM 225. I do have another job, a full-time job, and I'll explain that to you again a little bit later. But I am an adjunct instructor, and so as such, I don't have an office on campus, which doesn't really matter right now in the midst of COVID. And so I don't have office hours. And so if you want to contact me and have an actual meeting with me, you need to contact me through email to either set up a Zoom talk or a time where we could meet somewhere in person that you might be comfortable with. I do a lot of meetings at the Press Coffee Shop up at 32nd Street in Shea. That's kind of in the neighborhood of PVCC, so that's a possibility. Here's the course description and overview. COM 225 is designed to enhance a student's ability to present public speeches confidently and competently. That's it. Now, there's other overview here, which is important, but man, that one sentence is really critical. It's also designed to improve information literacy and critical thinking skills. That's a sort of a subsequent benefit of taking this class. Your prerequisites are English 101 or 107 or the equivalent of. And then it goes on to say that often in both the public and private sectors, you are called upon to inform, influence, inspire, or entertain an audience. And this course is designed to help you to become competent and confident in the midst of doing that and how to put together presentations. It's a 3-credit class. Required textbook and resources. The required textbook is the Cristiano and Ramirez Speaker's Manual, A Guide to High Impact Speaking. That is required. Required means you must have it. Are you getting the sense that I really want to pound this point? You have to have the book. You must have the book. You need the book. You can't do well in this class without the book. I've been doing this a long time. Before teaching at Paradise Valley Community College, I've taught, and concurrently with PVCC, I've taught at other institutions of higher education. There are always students every semester who come and ask, do we really need the textbook? And the answer is, yes, you really need the textbook. I'm sorry, I know it's $40 or $45. You need the textbook. So, are you going to get the textbook? Yes, you are. Get the textbook. The other things you need access to the internet because you need to be able to log on to Canvas and read through everything that's on Canvas for this class. And you need access to the Communication Research Guide online from the PVCC library, which is just a helpful tool. And then really, I would argue this is required too. It's the coronavirus information and updates. Our primary focus at PVCC, just like all the other Maricopa County community colleges, is everyone's safety in the midst of this pandemic. And so we have 2 different links there that you can go to find out what's up with the pandemic, what's all the latest on that. So you can access those as well. The next thing at the top of page 2 is the Maricopa County Community College District official course competencies for COM 225. And you can see them there. You can read them yourself. I won't go through each of those. The argument is that by taking this class, you will be, in theory, better at each one of these bullet points as a result of having taken this class. However, once again, because of COVID, because of the pandemic, there may be 1 or 2 of these that we won't necessarily be able to get to. In particular, that last one, unfortunately. In a strictly online public speaking class, there is really no way to be able to do impromptu speaking. So we're not going to get a chance to practice that. And I've already mentioned how I enjoy doing that, and it's always fun in the in-person classes, but we're not going to do that. And some of you right now, I know, are breathing a sigh of relief for that. But for the most part, all of these other competencies will be achieved by taking this class. Here are your assignments. Just a quick overview of your assignments. The next video is going to unpack the assignments a little bit more. And each one of these assignments is on Canvas in great detail, including the due dates, which are very important. You'll see these assignments on Canvas if you haven't already in great detail. But you're going to be giving 4 speeches during this class. You're going to submit those as video recordings. So there's going to be an autobiographical speech that is required to be 3 to 5 minutes. You're going to be giving an informative speech, which is required to be 5 to 7 minutes. You're going to be giving a persuasive speech, which is required to be 6 to 8 minutes. And then you'll be giving a speech of tribute. And that will be a manuscript speech. The other ones will be extemporaneous speaking. Extemporaneous speaking is not impromptu speaking. A lot of people think those words are synonyms. They are not. Extemporaneous speaking is speaking from notes, but knowing your notes well enough that you can speak conversationally rather than reading a manuscript. The last speech, though, the speech of tribute, kind of exalting somebody that's important in your life or that you've studied, that speech will be a manuscript speech. We're going to ask you to craft a manuscript and read the speech to us. Each of those is worth anywhere from 66 to 70 points depending on the speech. You will also be required to turn in 4 speech rough drafts. So prior to your autobiographical speech, whatever it is, 3, 4, 5, 6 days prior to submitting your actual final speech, you have to submit a rough draft. 4 points for me to be able to review. And those rough drafts must be word processed. They must follow the 6-step guide for effective speeches, as your speeches must also follow the 6-step guide for effective speeches. You cannot present a speech in this class without following the 6-step guide for effective public speeches. It's so important that there is a entirely separate video that I'm going to do about it. So the rough drafts, word processed, follows the 6-step guide, and follows the template for the rough drafts that you will find in your textbook. Another reason why you must have the textbook. And you're going to submit those on some date prior to submitting the final video of your speech. And the due date for those rough drafts, again, are in the assignments in Canvas. By the way, this syllabus here has a list of all the due dates for every one of the assignments too. In other words, no matter where you turn in this class, due dates for assignments are available. So the idea that you couldn't find a due date for an assignment, that also doesn't wash either. The due dates are clear in these. There is a syllabus acknowledgement assignment, which you should have already done by this time because the due date is passed. That's worth 8 points. By the way, the rough drafts are each worth 12 points. Look at Canvas for the details on that. You're going to have 4 video acknowledgement assignments. So after this video, you're going to answer some questions and submit that. And you're going to do that after each one of the 4 videos. Each of those assignments is worth 15 points, and you have due dates for those as well. The details are on Canvas. You're going to have 2 quizzes in this class, and each of these quizzes is worth 40 points. Again, you can look at the details on Canvas for those quizzes. And because, again, this is an online class, both of those quizzes are effectively open book. So you should do well on those quizzes. And then the last item is a self-evaluation paper of your informative speech. And again, on Canvas are all the details and the due date for that self-evaluation paper. That's worth 30 points. So there are 500 total points in this class, and your grades are going to be determined on a straight sliding scale of 10%. So 450 to 500 is an A, 400 to 449 is a B, and so on. Fewer than 300 points is an F. Next area, video recording. This is very important. Speeches will need to be recorded using a personal recording device, whatever, cell phone, webcam, laptop, iPad, digital camera. Videos of the speeches will need to be uploaded to YouTube or embedded in an email to me. The instructor, by the due date that the speeches are due, you have to send me some sort of a link for me to find your speech, whether it's your own personal YouTube channel, which I highly recommend you do, or you've got it somewhere else. There needs to be a link that I can access, that I can open, and that I can watch your speeches. So you can see there, I say you may want to establish your own YouTube channel if you haven't already done that. You got to make sure that the video is going to be able to be viewed by your instructor. Don't just assume that it's going to work. Check everything, test everything. And here's a big thing to remember. You need to remember that very often your videos are going to take way longer to upload than you could ever imagine. I've had students tell me that a 5-minute speech took 6 hours to upload. So you need to factor that into the due date. Don't think that you're going to, if the due date is at 11 o'clock on a certain evening, don't think that you can start uploading it at 10:45. That may not work. Okay, so factor that into your due date. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact me well in advance to the speech week that you're going to give it. Don't wait until the assignment due date is imminent. You got to communicate early. Don't procrastinate on anything. So then there's this expectations section that I think is important. You, the student, are in this class to receive college credit and to learn. The instructor, that would be me, is here to help you and to create assignments that will lead you into that learning. As such, it is important that we have a smooth and respectful working relationship. And here are my covenants to you as the instructor. I'm going to maintain a positive yet critical attitude toward you and your work. I'm going to demonstrate enthusiasm toward the curriculum, which is not hard for me to do. I love the curriculum. And I'm going to demonstrate enthusiasm toward you. And I will answer emails and inquiries in a timely manner. That means usually within 24 hours, most often even much quicker than that. I check email in Canvas during the semester. I check it multiple times a day. If you have turned in assignments, so on the day that speeches are due, I have several sections worth of speeches coming into me on the same day. So I may have to look at 50 speeches and review and grade 50 speeches. So it may take me a few days on the speeches to get back to you, but most other assignments I'll be able to give you feedback even within 24 hours. So those are the things that I covenant with you to do. Now, here's what I'm hoping to get from you. I expect that you are going to prepare diligently. You're going to prepare well. You're going to prepare hard. You're not going to procrastinate, and that you're going to turn in your work on time. This is a big deal on online classes. Turn in your work on time. You can't be late turning in your work. You need to know the due dates. You need to plan. Don't procrastinate, and turn your work in on time. Secondly, you will ask for help in a timely manner if you need help. Again, don't wait until an hour before something is due to try to get clarification on something. That's just not going to work, and I might not be available, especially if it's due at 11 o'clock at night. People who know me recognize that I'm usually in bed by 8 o'clock at night, so I'm not going to talk to you until the next day anyway. So make sure you know your due dates. And then third, you're going to be flexible, you're going to remain positive and respectful, and you're going to try to do your best under the circumstances, which I know are tough with the pandemic. Then we get into this long policies and statements section, so let me just kind of hit the highlights on that. That first little statement there under policies and statements is something that guides just about everything else in this section. Paradise Valley Community College is thoroughly invested in, and I would add dedicated to, proper academic learning environments that maximize the ability of students, for students and instructors to engage in course material. So, here are the rules of the district. Not my rules, rules of the district. You got to be registered for this class to be able to take it. Attendance for this class, because it's online, here you go. Due dates are important. Attendance will be tied to assignments, quizzes, and activities required to be submitted to the instructor on time in this class. Due dates are clearly identified in the assignment and on Canvas and, by the way, in this syllabus. Any student not turning in their assignments on time, responding to correspondence, or participating in the class as required, in other words, turning in assignments, will be withdrawn from the class by the instructor and assigned an F or a Y for the class. So make sure you turn in your assignments on time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to assume that you have taken yourself out of the class. If you wish to drop this class, you have to initiate that process either by contacting me so that I can withdraw you from the class and give me a clear statement that you wish to be withdrawn from the class, or you can also go to registration at PVCC when they are open and you're allowed to go there in person, and you can withdraw yourself and do the proper paperwork there. But unless you initiate the process, I will assume that you're still registered for the class, and you may end up receiving a failing grade based on the attendance policy and not turning in assignments. That's no fun. If you just quit doing the assignments and assume everything is going to be fine, don't do that. If you decide you can't do the assignments, which there are reasons why people can't finish the class, that's fine. Let me know so that I can properly withdraw you and you don't get hurt by that, okay? Now, for this class, COM 225, in this particular setup, we're doing the last 8 weeks of the semester. The last day to withdraw and receive a full refund is Friday, March 26th. That's pretty quick. And then the last day to withdraw and not receive an F is Monday, April 12th. Late or missed work, you can't make it up. Students cannot at any time, and this probably isn't much of a threat with an online class, but it has in the past been in in-person classes, but you can't record any conversations that are going on between students and instructors, between instructors. You're not allowed to record those things. You're supposed to have a Maricopa County Community College District email address, so you need to make sure you have one of those, because all of our communication through email is supposed to be done through your meid@maricopa.edu email account. So make sure you have that set up. Instructor-initiated withdrawals. I'm allowed, according to district policy, I have the right to withdraw you at any time for any violation of policy, and I don't even have to tell you that I've withdrawn you. So you got to make sure that you're living up to the policies and turning in your assignments on time. Make sure that you are engaged and staying in the class. There's, again, a statement about email and communication with the instructor. You need to be doing that through the Maricopa Community College email system or through the Canvas system. Academic integrity and conduct. This is a statement that's just ripped right out of the student handbook. Essentially says that you're not supposed to cheat, you're not supposed to procrastinate. I'm sorry, not procrastinate. You shouldn't procrastinate. You're not supposed to plagiarize. So you shouldn't cheat, shouldn't plagiarize. If you engage in intimidating, inappropriate, or unruly behavior, that's going to be a problem. And there's an entire second paragraph about inappropriate behavior. And so we can withdraw based on those items as well. In addition, every student is expected to know and comply with all current published policies, rules, and regulations as printed in any syllabus, college catalog, course schedule, and the student handbook. So it's your responsibility to know these things and abide by them. And if you've been at PVCC, you should know this already because it's in every one of our syllabi. Also, now that you have the syllabus, you're responsible for the syllabus. You can't say, well, I didn't know. So that's what that next paragraph says. You have received your syllabus. You have access to the syllabus by virtue of watching this video. And so don't use I didn't see the syllabus as an excuse. Can't do that anymore. There's our disability statement. And so we have all of that set up for you if you need help with that. There's also a statement on grievance policy. If you think that something didn't go well, that there was some injustice or whatever, there is a way to initiate a grievance policy, which you have to start with me, and you have to do it in a timely manner. I had somebody a few years ago circle back 3 years after the fact and say that I gave them the wrong grade. Yeah, sorry. Maybe I did, but it's too late now to figure that out. By the way, I didn't, but you got to do it in a timely manner. I love this. This was something that was put together by a number of the communication instructors and really kind of honchoed by Felicia Ramirez. The suggestions for exceeding expectations in this or any other class, they're great suggestions. Frequently log into Canvas. Read the announcements in Canvas. Don't assume that there aren't any announcements. Read the announcements. We're putting an announcement in there because it's important information that you need to have. Read the announcements. Be aware of assignment details and due dates. How many times have I mentioned the due dates already? The due dates might be important. You need to look at those and check for feedback, because I do give feedback. Read the manual. That's the public speaking manual, the required textbook that you must have. Read that. Use the worksheets and practice your speeches. Begin planning your speeches early and ask the instructor for timely clarification on speech assignments. Again, don't wait for the day of to ask for clarification. That's not going to help anybody. It's going to frustrate me and it's not going to help you. Plan to develop multiple drafts of your speeches and ask for feedback. That's the idea of the rough draft. You're going to submit a rough draft several days before the final speech is due, and I'm going to give you feedback. And you need to understand that sometimes that feedback is going to be this simple. This looks awesome. I can't wait to see the final speech. And that's it. You're good to go. Okay? But there are going to be other times when I'm going to say, I think you need to move this around. I think you need to say this differently. I think that you're lacking some help here. And I'm going to give you helpful feedback to make your final speech better. Test the workability of all presentational aids prior to the due date. Several of the speeches are going to require presentational aids, which you're going to have to figure out if you're recording your speech on a cell phone. You're going to have to figure out how to be able to come up with some sort of a visual aid, whether it's on a laptop or on a board or whatever. You're going to have to figure out a visual aid for that as well. Submit speeches on or before the due dates. Submit all assignments on or before due dates. And then really enjoy the learning experience, appreciate the opportunity, and apply what you have learned to situations beyond the class. I would argue that, and of course it's my discipline, so of course I'm going to argue this, but I have a bias, but I would argue that in communication classes, these are classes where virtually every class you take, every class session that you're in, you should have learned something in that class section that you can now immediately, you don't have to wait for the end of the semester or for your degree to be conveyed. You can, that day you can take what you've learned out into the world and start using it. So. And then here's your schedule. So that last page, beginning on page 6 and then finishing up on page 7, gives you the assignments and the due dates for those assignments. So that first assignment, the syllabus acknowledge, you should have already done. The second assignment is the one you're doing right now, watching this video and then answering the questions. That is due March 25th. So that would be the syllabus. I have a couple of other things to say about the syllabus, just in case I didn't make it clear before. Here you go. Turn in your assignments on time, please. It's very, very important. And by the way, I'll say this in the next video. I don't care how you get the assignments to me. You can do it through Canvas or you can just email it to me. I'm not worried about how you get them to me. I'm worried about getting them to me on a timely manner. So if you just want to email me your stuff, you can copy and paste into emails. You can do all that stuff, whatever you, just make sure you get them to me. Also, here's something that I've noticed since going online. I've never taught online before last spring. So this whole pandemic thing has given me kind of a new skill as well. But one of the things I've noticed is when people are recording speeches on a recording device and they're alone and they're just speaking to a recording device of some matter, it seems as though we get a little too casual with our presentation and with our language and with our attitude. Now, it's not that I'm not a casual, easygoing guy. I generally am. But if you're giving a if you're simulating giving a public presentation, you need to be careful about being too casual about it. You need to be careful about using casual language rather than more formal or academic language. You need to have an attitude that is working towards the idea that you're a professional and not just somebody who's kind of, kicking back, having a brew, and talking to somebody. Okay, so I know it's a phone or it's just a camera or whatever, but And I know that might be hard, and I'm not asking for total formality. I'm just asking for you to be careful about being too casual. And also, I mentioned this already, there's one or two of the course competencies that we may not quite be able to meet because of COVID. Again, let me discuss the book one more time. The book is essential for you to have, and I will tell you, boy, this is my heartiest endorsement of this book. I've been teaching public speaking for well over 20 years in various institutes of higher education, including Fuller Seminary and Grand Canyon University and Paradise Valley Community College. More than 20 years, almost 25 years I've been teaching this stuff. I've been exposed to dozens of public speaking books and public speaking textbooks. And the book that we're asking you to buy is the superior book out there right now. It really is. And I don't mind saying that, especially since there are two colleagues of mine who wrote the book, but it really is good. It's written in memo rather than narrative form, so it's an easy and quick read, which you should be happy about. It's also way less expensive than most public speaking textbooks. So there's a great advantage to having this book. A couple things right out of the gate with this book. You need to find those areas in the book that will help you write rough drafts for each of your speech, and especially, and this will be one of the questions you have to answer on one of these video acknowledgement assignments, especially look at pages 15 through 31. That's where you get your introduction into this 6-step guide thing that I'm all freaked out about. And you should be freaked out about it too. So make sure you look closely at pages 15 through 31. That's where Cristiano and Ramirez explain and unpack the 6-step guide. So a few other things that I want to talk about with public speaking, and you should be writing this stuff down because this is stuff that will appear on quizzes and the video acknowledgement assignments and things, so help you get some points. This is very basic, but it's true. There are two major benefits to becoming competent public speakers. Two major benefits to becoming competent public speakers. Number one, it will improve your personal and social abilities. It'll make you better in social situations. It just will. And that's a good thing. It'll make you better during in-person situations. It'll make you better at your job. It'll make you better with family. And I know family can be aggravating, I get that, but it will make you better in your family. And then the second one is that it will improve your academic and career skills and possibilities. Becoming an effective, competent public speaker will improve your academic skills and possibilities, and it'll make you a better writer. It'll make you a better researcher, and it'll also improve your marketplace, your career skills and possibilities as well. You will be in higher demand. You're going to be able to conduct research and analyze and evaluate arguments at a much higher level. So I want to talk a little bit about Aristotle, and then I'll talk a little bit about myself, and we'll be done with this first video. So Aristotle was this guy that lived 2,500 years ago, 5th and 4th century BCE. He was considered one of the greatest ever Greek philosophers, and he wrote something called Rhetoric. Not a very clever title, but it's one of the most important books ever written, where he talks about how to become a good public orator, how to become competent at using language, both publicly and in writing, although not many people wrote back then, but he was a writer, and so he talks about how to be good at this. And so he talks about how the public orator, in order to be effective, needs to encompass, embrace, and present 3 different things in their public speaking. So here they are, and I'm going to write them up here so that maybe it'll help you remember them. So some of you probably heard of these things before, but you have to be good at logos, you have to be good at pathos, and you have to be good at ethos. And I know some of you might dispute the pronunciation of that. Go ahead. Knock yourself out. But logos, if you you might already be thinking, well, that sounds like the word logic. Well, yeah, we get the word logic essentially from this. Logos is the idea that you are engaging somebody's mind. It's the cognitive aspect of speaking. You're giving facts and evidence. You are constructing a reasonable and rational argument. So you're appealing to the mind. You're giving good evidence and facts. Pathos is, now you're appealing to, the way we talk about it today, which is kind of a misnomer. A heart pumps blood. A heart really doesn't feel or think. But nevertheless, we say now pathos is we're appealing to a person's heart. Or in other words, we're appealing to their affect. So this is the affective part of our brain. We have a cognitive system in our brain. We have an affective system in our brain. We're appealing to the affective system now. We're appealing to feelings and emotions. We're telling a good story. It isn't enough to have all the facts on your side. You also have to know how to weave it into a good story, a good narrative that will evoke some feeling or some passion, some emotion about what you're talking about. And then ethos is, it's kind of the ethic side of public speaking. You have to be believable. You have to have credibility. You have to be able to show a path or a way to be able to get to where you're trying to bring your audience, whether it's an informative speech or a persuasive speech or a tribute speech exalting some person. You want to give them a way to be able to get to the same place where you are trying to present. So whether it's persuading them about a way of thinking or some behavior you want them to do, or just giving them more information about something, or helping them to appreciate somebody in your life that you really appreciate, whatever that might be. It's the idea that you're also believable. So essentially what Aristotle is saying is that to be effective in public speaking, you need to hit the mind, you need to hit the heart, and you need to be believable. You need to have credibility. And if you fall short in any one of these areas or all of these areas, it's going to lessen your effectiveness. So you want to strive to be good in all three of these. There's one other thing I want to talk about in terms of Aristotle. He also spoke about something known as the enthymeme. The enthymeme. So let me try to explain this. And it's a long part of what Aristotle writes about, and he's very good at it, and he's correct about this. In a short period of time, I want to be able to give you a basic understanding of it, and I'm going to ask you to watch a video that's going to talk a little bit about this as well, without using Aristotle's word, enthymeme. But an enthymeme, this should clear it right up for you. Here you go, write this down. This will clear it up. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. An enthymeme is a truncated syllogism. Did that help you? No? My producer and camera person is looking at me like I'm crazy. So no, apparently it didn't help you. So a truncated syllogism. What does the word truncate mean? It means to cut something off. And a syllogism, the most basic syllogism is, and you've seen this, no matter what, at some point in your life you've seen this. A syllogism looks like this. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. So, a truncated syllogism means you take part of it out, and yet the audience can still get there without you giving them all the information. In fact, when I was putting up if A equals B and B equals C, you were already saying, well, then that means that A equals C. It's the same thing here. If you know that A equals B and A equals C, you know that B equals C as well. That's a truncated syllogism. That's an enthymeme. This video that I want you to watch, it's Andrew Stanton. He's the backbone of the Pixar screenwriting team. He's a brilliant storyteller, and he did a TED Talk a while back, probably 2013, 2012, on storytelling that's absolutely brilliant. And during his talk, he talks a little bit about the enthymeme, though he doesn't use that word, but here's how he would describe it. He says, look, one of the most important ways to tell stories, one of the most important ways to persuade people is to not give them 4, but give them 2 plus 2. Let the audience participate by making them kind of figure things out. Here's another way he describes it. Good storytelling consists of a well-organized lack of information at times. In other words, you're inviting the audience, you're inviting the person watching the movie, you're inviting the person listening to the speech to fill the gaps, but you're doing it in such a way that they can't be led astray. You have such a well-organized lack of information that there's no way that they're not going to come to some different conclusion, but they feel like they're the ones that figured it out. So don't give your audience 4, give them 2 plus 2. There's a well-organized lack of information. When you watch this video, it's 19 minutes long, and it's very good. And you'll appreciate it because you'll know most of the movies that he talks about in this. But he opens with, admittedly, he uses a very bad word in his opening joke. So I hope you can get past that. I was able to, and when you find out who I really am, that should impress you. At any rate, he uses a very bad word, but his opening joke, which is very funny, is actually an enthymeme. When he tells the joke, it takes like a beat before the audience gets it and starts laughing because they had to put things together. He used a well-organized lack of information to lead the audience somewhere. So that's the enthymeme. I'll tell you a little bit more about the enthymeme. Years ago, most of you have seen the Progressive insurance commercials with Flo. Years ago, she had one commercial where there were the 2 idiots from the other insurance company standing over here, and she's over here talking to a client, and she shows them the big board where she puts all of their car information into the board, and it spins around, and it gives them prices from each of the different car insurance companies. And the 2 idiots over here start jumping up and down going, "We have that too, we have that too." And boom, their pants burst into flames. And then it shows Flo and the customer, and they're just looking, and then it shows the 2 idiots again, and one of them says, "No mas pantalonas," and that's the end of the commercial. That's an enthymeme. By having their pants burst into flame, they're saying, "Liar, liar, pants on fire. These companies lie to you." That's an enthymeme. You already got there, though. You already figured it out. One other example, and this is more of a visual enthymeme, and it's one of the most powerful enthymemes I've ever experienced in my life. And I even wrote a graduate level paper at Arizona State University about this enthymeme. There was a movie that came out in 1995. I know that most of you aren't even that old, but maybe you've seen it or heard of it. It's called Seven. Here, very clever. The title of the movie was Seven, and this is how they spelled it. Anyway, it's with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman and Gwyneth Paltrow. It's an extraordinarily dark, dark movie. Very dark. If you're not into dark stuff, if you're not into murder and crime and all that stuff, don't watch the movie. But for those of you who are, very good movie, very theological too. At any rate, the director, David Fincher, who's one of the great directors in Hollywood, he used the enthymeme throughout this movie. The movie Seven is based on, the idea is that it's the 7 deadly sins of the Catholic Church. So pride, greed, lust, sloth. What are some others, Caleb? Help me out here. Anger, wrath. Wrath is one. Anyway, the 7 deadly sins. I should probably know those. I don't. The 7 deadly sins, and there was a serial killer who was murdering people based on the 7 deadly sins. What's interesting about the show is that, and the reason I wrote the paper was because I saw the movie a couple of times and was haunted by the movie. Literally haunted for weeks each time I saw it. Movies don't often do that to me, but I was haunted. I couldn't figure out why. I started reading reviews of the movie, And I'm reading these reviews, and all the reviewers are talking about how it's an extraordinarily violent movie. And I began to think, actually, no. The movie wasn't extraordinarily violent, but it was extraordinarily horrific. What happens in the movie is you never see, until the very end, you never see any of the crimes committed. The director, David Fincher, only shows you the forensic scene and walks you through the forensic scene with the detectives. And that would be Brad Pitt and, lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. There you go. Thank you, Caleb. But the director walks you through it. So you understand how the person died, but you didn't see how they died. And so now what's happening in your mind is you're thinking, oh man, what was that like? And you begin constructing in your mind the narrative of how this person met their demise, their violent demise. The violence wasn't shown on the screen. Rather, the violence is in our own minds. This is an extraordinarily powerful tool. And it was an amazing way to be able to make this movie. And it was so powerful that it haunted people. That's another thing that the movie reviewers wrote about, was how many people specifically said, I was haunted by this movie for weeks afterwards. I wasn't the only one. It's kind of like watching The Silence of the Lambs and being haunted by that movie for weeks afterwards as well. So that's the enthymeme. It's very powerful when you're trying to do storytelling. It's very powerful when you're trying to persuade somebody of something. A well-organized lack of information. Don't give people 4, give them 2 plus 2. You'll see Stanton talk a little bit about that in that video. But the rest of the video is really important too. I want you to watch the entire video. It's a very important video. And in fact, the most important thing in that video doesn't come until the last couple of minutes, when he's talking about the movie Finding Nemo. That's the most important point he makes in the entire video, is when he's talking about Finding Nemo. So pay especially close attention to that as well. So a little bit about me, and then we're done with this particular video. I was actually born and raised in Phoenix. I'm one of those weird natives of Phoenix. I was born here in 1959. You can do the math. At Good Samaritan Hospital, which is now University Banner Hospital, downtown at 12th Street in McDowell. When I was born there, it was one building, and now it's this regional. It's amazing. But that's where I was born. Both of my daughters were actually born there as well, so that's kind of cool. I went to high school at 12th Street in Thomas, at a high school called North Phoenix High School. Even during the 70s, they still called it North Phoenix High School, even though Phoenix had grown way past Thomas Road by that time, and was no longer in North Phoenix. Along about in the 1990s, they finally changed the name of the school to just simply North High School, because I think they finally realized they weren't in North Phoenix anymore. Can you imagine, those of you who live out around the 101 or around Union Hills, Thomas Road, which is like a whole nother world, that was North Phoenix in the 30s when North High School was built. So that's where I went to high school. I did a couple of semesters in college, not very well. I wasn't really ready for college at that point. And so I decided, you know what, maybe I don't need a college degree. I think I'll go off and do something else, make some money. Maybe I'll come back to college later. And so I did. I went into the marketplace, and I went into, for 17 or 18 years, I did retail and restaurant management, and was pretty good at it, and enjoyed it, and got to live in several different places across the country during my early 20s. I lived in Texas a couple of times. I lived for a while in Abilene, Texas, which was nice, and I lived for a while in Houston, which I wasn't that excited about. My standard line is that I spent 7 years in Houston one year. I also spent 5 years living in Chicago, which I loved. I loved Chicago. Don't know that I'd live there now. The traffic is, I know the traffic was bad back then as well, but man, it's frustrating now. But I still love the city. I love pretty much all the Chicago sports. I'm a big Michael Jordan fan. You're never going to be able to convince me that LeBron is better than Michael. Michael's better than LeBron, come on. Maybe if you got LeBron to come in here and twist my arm, I might agree that LeBron's better. But my biggest thing is really the Chicago Blackhawks. I love the Chicago Blackhawks hockey team, even though they stink right now, which is sad. But I lived there for a while, eventually moved back to Phoenix in the capacity of restaurant management and retail management, depending on where I was working. At some point, I met a person named Jackie in the workplace, and she was somebody who was way different than I was, and we became very good friends for a couple of years, but we couldn't date because she was, kind of involved. And I was, involved. But after a couple of years, that got straightened out, and we had a conversation about possibly getting together, and we did. The problem was that we had two completely different worldviews. She was born and raised in a Christian church, and I was born and raised completely not in a Christian, nowhere. I never went to church. Didn't know anything. Didn't know anything about the Bible, didn't know anything about church, thought they were all freaks, wanted to stay away from it, but I really liked Jackie. So we got together, started going to church with her, and I ended up liking the church and becoming a Christian. And so that kind of changed the trajectory of my life. Eventually, in my mid-30s, I decided to leave the marketplace and go back to school so that I could launch a different vocational pathway. And so I ended up going to Grand Canyon University, and I got my Bachelor of Arts from Grand Canyon University in religious studies with a minor in communication and drama. And then I went to a seminary, Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. It's in Southern California. And did that for 4 years and got my Master of Divinity. So I have a Master's in Theology. So now I know a little bit more about the Bible than I did when I grew up. And then I wasn't quite ready yet to re-enter the marketplace, and I was part-time. I was speaking in different places, working part-time for a church up at 42nd Street in Greenway. And I decided, I'm still not done with school. I applied to Arizona State University, the Hugh Downs School of Human Communication. I wanted to work on a Master of Arts in Communication Theory with an emphasis in rhetorical studies. Somehow I was able to get into that school. That's not the easiest school in the world to get into. It's just like trying to get into master's work at the Walter Cronkite School of Media and Journalism. They're good schools. I was surprised. I got into the school. 2.5 years later, I have my Master of Arts in Communication. That's why I'm qualified to be doing what I'm doing here at Paradise Valley Community College. But that's my full-time job is while I was at ASU working on that master's, I became lead pastor of that church over at 42nd Street and Greenway back in the day. That's 21 years ago. And then 9 years ago, I was asked by a church called Redemption Church Arizona to leave there and come and lead one of their congregations. And so I've been with Redemption Church Arizona for the last 9 years. Redemption Church is one church with 10 congregations in Arizona, and I lead the Arcadia congregation. So our location is at 33rd Street and Camelback. So we're near Arcadia, we're near the Biltmore. And so that's why public speaking, I'm a public speaker for the most part, but I also teach public speaking, and I do a lot of public speaking outside of the church context as well. So I've spoken to companies and corporations. In 1997, I was the National Toastmasters champion in humorous speaking. So I've done a lot of different public speaking, and I love the discipline of communication and public speaking, and that's what I want to help you with in this class. But that's a little bit about me and where I work during the week, or actually during the weekends too. But that's my full-time job. I do this at PVCC part-time and love it. Love the people there. Love our department head, Dr. Ruby. Really good. I am married to Jackie, this woman that I met in the marketplace 36 years ago. I'm married to her now. We have 2 children, 2 daughters, Shelby and Darby. Shelby's 28, Darby's 24. Shelby just finished at Baylor College of Medicine. She's passed her boards to become a physician's assistant, and she's getting licensed now in Arizona. and looking for a job. And Darby has a Master of Science in Athletic Training, and she's an athletic trainer at a high school in Springfield, Illinois, central Illinois. And both of them went to college in Chicago. I think that was partly my influence. Every summer we would take our kids to the Midwest, to Minneapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, Iowa, and they loved the Midwest, so Darby decided to stay. She also met a guy. I married them. I officiated their wedding, and he has a Master of Arts in Theology, so very similar to me, and he's actually, his name is Joey, and he's the head volleyball coach at Lincoln Christian University in Lincoln, Illinois, and he works at a coffee shop, so they live there. So that's a little bit about me. If you have any other questions about me, anything you want to know, all you got to do is email me or message me in Canvas. I'd be happy to talk with you. I am looking very forward to our time together, and I hope you are as well. That is the conclusion of this first video. Now it's time to answer your questions and then move on to the second video.